Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Red Raider basketball, a day of deadlines, sort of, and good news regarding your roster soon to arrive.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by TurboTax, ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed. Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert, with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you as we are dropping in to try and catch up sort of on the fly, as we've got, depending upon when you're listening to this, an interesting 24, 36, whatever hours playing out here through Sunday into Monday. We're back to talking deadline or no deadline-ish kind of conversation. This will center around a lot of basketball movement for this particular conversation. We're going to get into, on the next episode, what's happening as far as the football portal party, which picked right back up where they left off over the weekend, Chris. But for today, we are round ball oriented. We'll get into some movement and some vibes as we sit here as far as potential movement, whether it comes to staff or players. A lot of these things obviously remaining fluid. So we'll get to the latest on that. Also want to get to what is actually set to play out through Sunday, how Texas Tech as a program is operating based on these deadlines we've discussed before. And of course, a general question, Chris, and I can very naturally play this ignorant role because I've got a lot of questions about this. I don't even have to fake it today when I say, what is happening? It's a genuine question. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts on what's coming up over the next few hours, I guess.
Yeah, this is a weird little time we're in right now. I think everybody is flying blind a bit. I think that a deadline on collective activity could be imminent, and yet it may not be, or there may be a gray area a bit, because what you're, and I don't know the timing of this, but the House case is expected to be ruled upon tomorrow, but may not. And I think that so if the House case is ruled upon and then everything is what was discussed prior, in that, okay, collectives essentially, it can't be a name, image, and likeness, pay for play type scenario, however you want to phrase that, word it. But right now it is. And so you've got this timetable that I think there's a lot of people in the industry, which is why you've seen a flurry of activity over the weekend. There's a lot of people in the industry that are trying to get business done and front load these contracts through these collectives prior to Sunday ending. Because I don't know what Monday brings. There's also been, and so I'll just try to lay it out, because I'm kind of as ignorant on this as you are, but I can just go off of what we read and everything like that, trying to get a lay of the land here. What we also know is that there's a couple of other thoughts, because I think a lot of people are kind of going, better get it done and get it done now. Then you have some thought that there's going to be this 48 to 72 hour window to where collectives can still operate after it's ruled upon, whether that's backdating contracts or whether that's, hey, we'll give you everybody a bit of a grace period, whether it's a day or three to kind of, get your business wrapped up. And then there's some that would lead you to believe that maybe it isn't ruled upon, and we kind of keep kicking the can down the road just a bit. But even with that, there's some thought that, okay, when they do come back and rule on it, whenever that would be, they're going to retroactively say, hey, if you didn't get anything done by that deadline, then all bets are off. And so what am I talking about? What does this mean exactly?
Yes, Chris.
So yeah, well, you've got players on your teams. This is really a basketball conversation right now, just because the timing of everything. football business has been done. But what you can do is you can basically, the collective can get involved here. In Texas Tech's case, the Matador Club can get involved, and they can say, yes, you're going to have these revenue share numbers here, but we can actually do a separate deal for you and really, bring in talent, or we can keep talent here and really make it worthwhile to where you will stay, or we can get you here. And obviously the Matador Club, like a lot of these collectives, is been a huge help to their athletics program, Matador Club, more than most, thanks to Cody and Dusty and Mark McDougall and Tim Culp and Gary Peterson, and on it goes. And a variety of folks that have helped out the cause. So you're trying
people in our audience that are on that list, Chris.
Okay, yeah, there you go. But you've got the ability to front load money. So the Matador Club, and we'll just use Texas Tech an example and localize this. You can basically say, hey, JT Toppin, even though we've only got 3.7-ish revenue share in the fall is what we've kind of earmarked, we can do a whole separate deal and really make it worth your while to stay here, which if you, the word on the street certainly seems like that is close to a reality. Same with Christian Anderson. Past that, I'm not real sure. But that's why I think the timing here is interesting, and whether it is the deadline on a Sunday night or whether you do have a 48, 72-hour window, or whether this really wasn't a deadline or not, I don't know. I just know that most of these collectives are operating that if you want to be safe and you're dealing with, you can't just go backdating and falsifying documents and all these things and backdating stuff or chancing it on a whim, because you're dealing with the court system, the federal court system. So that's why I think everybody's like taking this very seriously and really trying to get everything done, and imminently, So,
sure.
I hope I'm not confusing. It is very confusing. It's a weird dynamic, but that's kind of what you're dealing with right now as it relates to your roster. And everybody out there locked on, fill in school blank here with their basketball team, if they've got an active collective, which Texas Tech does, and a lot of these schools do, that's kind of what how does this affect the school like Houston or like the schools that were in the Final Four? I really don't know. I don't know if they're concurrent here with their focus on the court and then also trying to do business off to the side. I don't know. I just know that that's what's largely going on here.
What a weird spot to be in. And, kind of one thing you mentioned that stood out to me is even if you got ducks in a row and then you throw in a word like retroactively, now involving time travel, we're going to go back and we're going to do this or that. So we really hope you got some ducks in a row. Crazy to think about these balls being juggled and kept in the air for whatever program. And yeah, interesting question to consider regarding programs that are still, thinking about basketball and 40 minutes left to play and things like that. The thing that is not so complicated that obviously got some attention from me as well in that spiel, Chris, JT Toppin, Christian Anderson, and good vibes is what it sounded like as far as their future, particularly continuing in Lubbock. Maybe too early to read into some of the decision making since we don't actually have an official decision just yet, but we've already touched on some of the things that are probably spinning these decisions or conversations one way or another for guys like Toppin or Darion Williams or Christian Anderson, who's in a much different category than say those guys at the points they are in their careers. But really glad to hear, and I know a lot of Red Raiders in the audience will be glad to hear that maybe there's some early indication you got some positive things happening there. And I don't know how I was feeling about the future of JT Toppin. I may have been a little bit skeptical that he was going to continue to give it a run in Lubbock, but maybe that season meant more to him than I understood it to.
And I listened to something that Jerome Tang and Scott Drew did in San Antonio this week. Actually, it was just a couple of days ago. And they were talking about, they had a couple of huge portal additions this past offseason. Jeremy Roach from Duke, And then obviously Coleman Hawkins, and then they had other players, Norshad O'Meara also at Baylor, and it was high profile, the additions and some of the money being thrown around and all these things. And so they were in the midst of this interview. I have a reason why I was bringing this up, but in the midst of this interview, they were talking about that and how it had changed them, or any dynamics, the way they coached, or the outside noise that it created. And they both agreed that.
First, today's episode brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day, it's all happening with no stressing, no worrying, and no waiting. Now, this is Taxes with Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
They both agreed that the price of poker had nearly doubled from last offseason to now. And because what you're seeing is that you're seeing that this is what most feel like is a one-time window. Now, whether that is reality or not, I don't know. But you can do this right now. You don't know what it's going to look like, at the end of the week or a year from now or whatever. And I think that you're able to really put your best foot forward with somebody like JT Toppin. And think about it in these terms. Let's just think about it in these terms. If there's any kind of gamble at all, think about equal compensation for a first-round draft pick. And again, the part that doesn't make this equal is a rookie with a guaranteed contract. It's I think a 4-year contract, and we can only talk about 1 year in college. Okay. So it's not necessarily equal, but just for the sake of our discussion here, think about the 1 year that you would offer them versus the 1 year they would spend in the NBA with equal pay. You could pay somebody like a first round draft pick, and many are. It's wild. There are people that are getting paid right now. I mean, there was a Maryland guard that I watched lose his last game right in front of me to Florida, who's going to play for the title. And he's a good player, but it appears that Tennessee is going to pay him $3 million. I can't say if that is accurate or not, but that's kind of what you're talking about as far as price tag goes. But let's think about that. In the NBA, that's a training camp, that's an 82-game schedule, and then it's playoffs. You could in theory play somewhere between 90 to 100 games. Like when you factor in preseason, the regular season, all that stuff, we as colleges are basically saying, hey man, we just want like less than half of that. And meanwhile, we'll outfit you, we'll feed you, you'll get great weight training. Yes, you got to go to some class and all that stuff, but see, it's not even the same job. Now, granted, again, it's different because you've got, I get a second year of that salary and a third year of that and a fourth year of that and all that stuff, and that's life-changing money. However, if there's any sort of question here, and I think that some of these folks, like a JT Toppin, have representation that is going, man, this is a hard one to walk away from. Less wear and tear on you. You're going to get coached. You're going to be, and you're still so young that everything's still out in front of you. But I think that this little window here, you're trying to take advantage of it like other teams are. And I think JT Toppin is at last check. I think it's pretty likely that he's back. I don't know how that gets announced. I don't know if that's, the Matador Club or Texas Tech or Grant McCasland or JT Toppin himself or JT's agent. And then I don't know if you could do a deal with him and he'd be like, hey man, but I'm still going to go through the NBA process. I just don't know all these dynamics. But it's sure sounding like that this is a very realistic option. And like you said, I'm here for it. I mean, if you want to bring back the Big 12 Player of the Year, you will make some serious news and noise around the sport and in your league if you can if an announcement like that is forthcoming.
I do think it's kind of interesting too. It's not all about dollar to dollar or development or things like that. But I wonder what the quality of life aspect is like for some of those guys that are playing in Big 12 environments and March Madness and camp it. Like I sort of joked, sort of not last week. I don't know if there's a grown man that you could find that tell these guys get out of college early, get out there as soon as whenever you've got this kind of opportunity. I feel like Billy Madison grabbing that fat kid's cheeks and saying, stay as long as you can. Don't ever leave. But that was without the $3 million or the $2 million or the 1.7 or whatever. So there's a whole lot that makes it a lot more attractive. And I've talked about this before. That was kind of one of the rosier hopes, I guess, coming into the NIL era, specifically for college basketball, that maybe you would have some better talent hanging around longer, which I don't think is bad for this game or this level of competition. So certainly not bad for the team I'm rooting for, if that's the case. And that's great to hear. I did, before we wrap it up, Chris, want to touch on something I know we're texting with the Matador mob about over the weekend. And I don't know how far along it is as far as development, but potentially some more staff news that we're going to have coming down the pipe as it relates to Grant's staff.
Yeah, I mean, and this is part of the, I think Grant is very well respected. He's a damn good coach. And when you go to the Elite Eight, you know that there's just people that want to be in that Elite Eight type of business, right? And I think there was a lot of social media activity a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago about Kellen Buffington in Miami with Jay Lucas, who was a Duke assistant that got the University of Miami job. There was a lot of chatter there. I think you've been able to maneuver your way through that. I think there is a lot of chatter about Coach AC and his ties to Darren DeVries, who's the new Indiana coach. I think you've been able to maneuver your way through that. I think obviously Matt Breyer is now the head coach at SFA. And then Luke Barnwell, this one I understand. It makes a lot of sense. Who's the new Iowa coach? Ben McCollum, and there's a relationships there with all these people, and I think Coach Barnwell this was the heavy word out of San Antonio in the Final Four, which is where all these coaches go, and then you've got all kinds of, hey, let me meet you here. We're trying to do this. And there's just a lot of conversations going on. It's like a coaches convention and stuff. And anyway, that seemed to be the word out of San Antonio, that Luke Barnwell was going to go to Iowa. I hope that's not true. I fear that it is, and good for him, though, because I think, again, he's known Ben McCollum, I think, as long, if not longer, than Coach McCasland and Coach Linder, and I think he talks to him often, and he's from generally that area right there, and so that makes some sense. But, his contacts, being the head coach at Sunrise Prep, which he'd either coached against or coached the player or whatever is amazing to me. All the people that he had come in contact with, or it was like, yeah, he was either on my team, or I know that coach because he came and recruited my school, or we coached against him. When you're at a prep school, it's just a factory, and it's a basketball factory. So you could have as many as 2 spots to fill if you're Grant McCasland, and so he could do a variety of different things with that. He could promote somebody, which wouldn't shock me a bit. He could hire from the outside, which I almost would think that at least at some level you're going to, because if you promote somebody, then there's a spot beneath that, and all that stuff. So I would guess that between hiring from the outside and all that, but that's where it sits right here. And all this is what sucks is all this has happened so fast, and oh, by the way, I mean, the folks in College Station wanted to talk to the head coach too. It's like, man, I'm trying to decompress. We had a great season. It ended abruptly. Now you drop all this on my lap. I got people wanting to take my coaches. I've got the roster that I've got to try to put together, much less add to it and keep. And then, oh, by the way, somebody wants me to talk to them about their head job. And so there's been a lot going on in the week that you've had, and yet you look up and Houston and Florida are about to play for the Natty, and you're the last team to beat Houston, and you led said Florida by 9 points with 3 minutes and change left. I mean, nuts. And I wonder what life would look like if you had advanced to Florida, because you could have beat Auburn. And I just, anyway, it could have been a rematch like we talked about with University of Houston, and we'd all been in San Antonio, and our pets' heads would be falling off, and we'd be going, chaotic and everything like that, going, oh my God. And I don't know what business would have looked like with your staff and your players and all that stuff, with all this stuff going on, because it wouldn't have changed anything. So there you go. I'll stop rambling.
All right, our next conversation, we'll swing our attention back to Joey McGuire's football program, who got a big win as far as another portal addition at an impact spot. We'll go back to talking David Bailey and what else could be coming down the pipe for Coach McGuire and the Red Raiders as they continue to maneuver what was recently a snowy spring football camp. A little football weather, the links to which West Texas will go to try and toughen these guys up. Is everybody doing that everywhere on April whatever? But we're doing it in the 806. And then back to your regularly scheduled mid-80s or whatever coming up this week. You never know. Chris, appreciate a little extra time here to dive into this conversation. We'll get back to it on the football front. And, of course, any developing basketball news, we're back to it as well. So make sure you get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you miss nothing as it's happening fast and furiously.
Yeah, and I, before we leave you here, you could do a lot of things if you have a nucleus of a JT Toppin and a Christian Anderson to build around. So we'll just kind of see what we get, and anyway, we're as interested as anybody else. How about that? But guns up. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I hope you've got to build a snowman if you were in certain parts of West Texas. If not, I hope you enjoyed some nice sunny weather outside and the like. But anyway, guns up. We'll talk to you next time. Keep hope alive, people.
The Gore-Tex puffy jacket or the Bermuda shorts, you got to keep them both handy. You never know what could be happening 24 hours from now on the South Plains. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks to the Everydayers. Thanks to the Matador Mob. Appreciate you always being out there and riding along. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial if you are interested in joining that crew. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text and straight to your phone. Appreciate you all for being out there. Thank you for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.